Greetings and welcome to this teleconference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. I'm your host, Chris Payne, editor for MS Focus, and I'm joined by Katrina Bawden, who will be talking to us about cognition and MS. After a presentation from Katrina, we'll open it up for your questions and comments. Now I'm delighted to introduce our speaker. Katrina Bawden is a nurse practitioner based in Salt Lake City, Utah. She specializes in multiple sclerosis and has worked with the MS population since 2003 and has specialized in multiple sclerosis since 2009. Her passion is educating those affected by MS. She loves to learn about MS as much as possible and attends as many continuing education courses related to MS as she can. When she is not working, she enjoys spending time with her family, hiking, cooking, and photography. We're pleased to have her join us to present on this important topic. Katrina, thank you so much for being here with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, MS Foundation. Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It's such a weird world that we live in, that I'm in my house and everyone's in their houses or wherever you may be, and we're able to join together and see this presentation. I'm going to be honest, it's a little weird for me to present virtually because I very much would so much rather be in a room with everybody, and I'm a big joke teller and I like to talk to people and read the room, and I am not good at laughing at my own jokes, and so I just hope I can make this as entertaining and applicable as possible. But thank you all for being here. One reason I chose this topic is it's such a hot topic, and it's something that comes up every day. Every day I have somebody say, hey, I'm having trouble with cognition. What can I do? And I feel that it's even more relevant now than it ever has been. I would love to answer any questions that come up. Let's just make sure you put them in the chat box and I can answer them all at the end. And I'm going to get going here and talk about cognition in multiple sclerosis. So first off, oh, I've already run into my first technical issue. My screen's not moving. Let's see if it'll go. The computer just had to throw me off. Okay, so what is cognition? And you know what's interesting? I was talking to my husband and he said, well, what is cognition? How do you explain that? And so I took to the dictionary. Cognition from the dictionary. We do still have dictionaries, everybody. In case they're wondering, my mom has a big, fat, thick one in her library. I did find it. I also took to the web, and so this is from multiple sources. Cognition is cognitive mental process, which is of relating to, being, or involving conscious intellectual activity, such as thinking, reasoning, or remembering. And this can include short and long-term memory, word finding trouble, processing speed, upper executive functioning, etc. So this could be something as simple as when you're trying to describe to your friends a table, and you know you want to say table, but you can't think of table, so you say, you know, that place where you eat, that thing that you eat on, and we have dinner there, and we put plates on it. That could be part of the cognitive process with multiple sclerosis. Cognition could affect your ability to remember appointments or remember important things. So we're going to talk about cognition and multiple sclerosis this evening. So how prevalent is cognition and cognitive deficits in multiple sclerosis? The prevalence of cognitive changes in people who have multiple sclerosis range anywhere from 33% affected to as high as 65% affected. Cognitive impairment can occur in all forms of multiple sclerosis. That includes clinically isolated syndrome. It includes secondary progressive, relapsing remitting, and primary progressive. For some people, sometimes the cognitive changes may be the very first symptom of multiple sclerosis. They may note that they're having trouble remembering things or they're forgetting things easily, and that may be their very first symptom. Cognitive changes are highly variable in severity and progression from person to person. Now, one hard thing about cognitive changes in multiple sclerosis is it's one of those gosh darn silent symptoms that we talk about. No one else can see it, but you feel it and you know it's there. So what can we do about it? That's what we're going to talk about this evening. There are other things that can worsen cognition, and we're going to talk about these as we go on. But we have a lot of studies to back up that depression can worsen cognition, sleep trouble can worsen cognition, side effects of medication, smoking, poor diet, and low vitamin D, amongst others. So, can I just take a pill for this? I mean, we live in a world where we just take a pill, right? And you may see the commercials on TV for some supplement that's going to help your memory, or you may have heard, hey, my friend tried this Alzheimer medication, it worked for them. So let's talk about the data behind just taking a pill for cognition. Unfortunately, medications that help memory in Alzheimer's disease do not help in multiple sclerosis. So a couple small studies here looking at Aricept. It didn't improve memory compared to placebo in 120 patients. Another one in 60 patients showed no treatment effect. And then Namenda also didn't, and it can temporarily make things worse. Now remember, also with every medication comes a side effect, and these medications aren't something to take lightly. They have some pretty decent side effects with them. So unless I'm questioning if somebody has dementia or Alzheimer's, I'm generally not prescribing medication for their cognition for multiple sclerosis because of the other things associated with them. So what about stimulants? A lot of people find that stimulants improve their fatigue, so can it help their cognition as well? Well, one small study on Nuvigil showed some improvement in maybe 1 out of 8 cognitive measures, so delayed memory. And in my experience, people with MS or delayed memory isn't quite as bad as short term. Provigil in one small study showed that it may improve some working memory, attention, verbal fluency, and mood. So these are preliminary findings at best and have been mixed in subsequent studies. So my general stance on stimulants is, hey, look, if you're super tired, if you have that MS fatigue, you're really having trouble, and you want to give a stimulant a try, could be worth talking to your prescriber about, whether it's your neurologist or nurse practitioner or whoever it may be, about if you might find some benefit from it, and if the benefit is worth the possible side effects and the risks and other things. So kind of mixed there. Could they help? Maybe, maybe not. I've had some people say, well, if I'm less tired, if I'm less fatigued, I tend to think better. So if you're one of those people, it may help, maybe, maybe not. But what else can we do? What about ginkgo? Good old ginkgo. I remember when I was in junior high, those smoothies were super popular everywhere, and I'd have them add ginkgo. I don't know why. I thought it was going to make me smarter. Turns out it doesn't, and it doesn't improve cognitive performance in people with MS. It might give you more energy. Don't know, but I'm a big proponent of don't waste your money on supplements if they're not helping you. So at this point, people might be upset at me and saying, all right, Katrina, I've been sitting here listening for a solid 10 minutes and you've given me no help. And if there's no medication to treat my cognition, what can I do and why the heck am I here? So let's talk about neuropsychologists. Some of you may have had neuropsychology testing before. And for a lot of people, a full comprehensive evaluation and assessment of cognitive function by a neuropsychologist may be necessary in some circumstances. Neuropsychologists can help identify specific areas of deficits as well as strengths to determine which interventions are likely to be of greatest benefit. And clinical trials have shown that cognitive rehabilitation may actually improve cognitive function. So when you go for testing with a neuropsychologist, I just want to warn people, it's a long day. It's either split into a couple days or it's even 6 hours long. And what they are doing is they are testing your ability to think and remember, and they're identifying parts of your brain that are having trouble remembering, and then they can give you specific exercises to help that. So for example, if depression is the root of the problem, they can help arrange therapy. If speech is an issue, they can help arrange speech therapy. They can also give you specific exercises that may help for for you specifically, for how your brain is affected by multiple sclerosis. So it's very patient specific. Also, if you're applying for disability, I generally recommend that people have a neuropsych evaluation, because you saying to me, I have trouble remembering, is very objective. But if a neuropsychologist does a full evaluation and identifies deficits, that's objective, and we can give that to a disability company to help our disability case. I've also had this be in our favor many times when I have patients saying, I have such trouble remembering, I'm just struggling, I'm not doing well. And I send them to a neuropsychologist, and the neuropsychologist says, hey, guess what? You're actually doing great. You're testing above average, things are going really well. And for some people, they say that's just enough confidence booster to help them keep going. Or they may say, hey, you know, you're doing really good, except in this one area, let's do something about that. Let's work on that. And then I do have some people request a neuropsychologist referral right when they're diagnosed, so that they have a baseline of their cognition. So going forward, they make sure that they're safe. And if they notice a change, they have something to go off of. I've had some people do a neuropsych evaluation, a full comprehensive evaluation, and then 10 years later repeat it and it's totally stable. I've had them repeat it 10 years later and they're actually doing better. Some of my physicians and attorneys that have multiple sclerosis like to have a neuropsych evaluation just to reassure themselves that they're okay and they can continue working. This is something that would go through your insurance and something that you would require a referral for from your neurology provider. So if we're not having a formal evaluation, well, what can we do? I'm lucky enough that I work closely with quite a few neuropsychologists. And in fact, my office is right across from a neuropsychologist. And this is something I've taken to heart and asked a lot of questions on and done a lot of research in regards to cognition. And so what can we do? So let's talk about the pearls from the neuropsychologists. They recommend you eat well, sleep well, quit smoking if you smoke, treat depression, obtain adequate vitamin D levels, exercise, play word games out loud with family and friends, and participate in a hobby, and a couple more things that I'm going to get to. So I'm going to break down each of those. First off, let's talk about eating well. There is no specific diet for multiple sclerosis. There are many different diets you can use that luckily the MS Foundation has some great brochures that you all can refer to. I believe you can access those online. But I'm a big proponent of listening to your body. So food fuels your brain. If you're not eating well, you're not going to have the right fuel to fuel your brain for you to think. Think about days when you're having a really bad day and you skipped breakfast. You might not be thinking clearly because you don't have good food to fuel your brain. I like it when people eat whole fruits and vegetables, less preservatives, good healthy food, good healthy fats, nice whole food to help fuel their brain. And in fact, our naturopathic friends believe that you can fix many of the cognitive problems of multiple sclerosis just by eating a good, healthy, whole food diet. And it might take some work. It might take some planning to plan good, healthy foods. But that might use your upper executive functioning part of your brain and be some good exercise for you. So when it comes to eating well, be aware of what you're putting in your body. Is it a good choice? And think the food is going to fuel your brain. And if you're eating well, it might improve cognition. So then sleeping well. You might need to undergo a formal sleep evaluation. If you wake up tired every morning, or you're snoring, or you're gasping for breath, you might have sleep apnea, or you might have restless leg syndrome, or something else that is waking you at night so you're not getting good, solid sleep. If that's the case, a formal sleep evaluation may be very beneficial. Let's say you have sleep apnea and you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. If you're not getting enough oxygen, you're not going to think appropriately. So you may need a CPAP. We may need some interventions there, which reminds me of eating well and hydration. Water, H2O, oxygen. Oxygen is super important for us to think clearly. So you need to make sure you're hydrating well as eating well. And then back to sleeping well. Follow good sleep hygiene. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Keep your room cool. Don't look at screens an hour before bedtime. And I know that is so hard in the world that we live in, but don't look at screens an hour before bedtime so that your body can calm down, your brain can calm down, and you can get good quality sleep. Have a bedtime routine and plan on a minimum of 8 hours of sleep per night. I have people get upset at me all the time when I say this, but if you are not getting enough sleep, if you're sleep deprived, you are not going to be thinking clearly, unfortunately. So sleep, back to what your mama told you. And then you can't stay up super late some nights and then nap other days. Sleep routine is super important. If you have poor sleep quality, you're going to have trouble thinking. Think about when you're in college, those of you who went to college or high school or junior high and you pulled all-nighters and tried to take a test in the morning. When you're sleep deprived, you may not do so well on that test. Also, I have a lot of people with multiple sclerosis tell me, hey, sometimes I just hit a wall. I am so tired, I hit a wall and I just can't think. When that happens, that's your body's way of telling you to take a break, take a rest. And if you take a break and take a rest, even a 15-minute power nap, or for some people it's a 2-hour rest, or for some people it's meditation or yoga or turning off the world around them, that might be enough to reset your thinking button so then you can think clearly, and you might think more clearly after a rest. And I was talking to a woman the other day and she said, I just, sometimes my brain is just done. It's just done and I just can't think and I just have to go to bed. It stinks, but what you have to do is go to bed. And that's your body's way of saying, I have to go to bed. So maybe you have communicated that with your family. Hey, I'm not thinking well. I'm super tired. I've got to go to bed. And you might be in bed for 12 hours. And then hopefully when you wake up, you've reset and you can think more clearly again. But it's more important to have a good sleep routine so that doesn't happen, and that happens as little as possible. Quit smoking. Oh, my smoking picture isn't there. There it is. So this picture has been going around since 2008. Basically, it shows people who were smoking when they had their first clinical event with multiple sclerosis. If they continued smoking, they converted to clinically definite MS sooner. The reason I chose this picture is because it kind of shows that smoking worsens everything. I know it's a super hard time for me to tell you to quit smoking right now with the pandemic going on and stress and everything else. But if there is one thing you can do for your MS, for your health, for your cognition, it's quit smoking. So please talk to your providers about what they can do to help you quit smoking because it's probably worsening everything else. So then, how about let's treat depression? Talk to your provider about treatment options for depression, including medications as well as therapy. The brain is an amazing organ, and when you're depressed, it will forget things to protect itself. I see people in clinic all the time, and they think they must have MS, or they must have a brain tumor, or they must have something going on. And when we go through all of the testing, it turns out that depression is the root of the problem. And if we treat depression, their cognitive deficits and their memory trouble gets better. And oftentimes I send people to the neuropsychologists for comprehensive testing, and it turns out that depression is the root of the problem. They go see a psychiatrist, a therapist, and their cognition gets better. So truly, truly, treating depression can improve your cognition. I have a lot of people that are super hesitant to treat depression, or they feel embarrassed or upset that they have depression. In my very simplistic brain, when I think about depression and multiple sclerosis, Multiple sclerosis means many scars or many lesions. Those are in your brain. They may be in your spinal cord as well, but they're in your brain. Depression is a problem with neurotransmitters. So it makes sense that if you have scars in your brain, your neurotransmitters may not be working like they should. And more than 50% of folks with MS have depression as well, and difficult to treat depression. It's not your fault, it's the MS's fault. And please treat it, and that hopefully will help your cognition as well. Obtain adequate vitamin D levels. Everyone requires a different dose of vitamin D. I get asked all the time, how much vitamin D should I be taking? Well, that depends on your individual blood level. I like my patients' vitamin D level to be between 60 and 80. That seems to be a sweet spot. So your dose may be different depending on how much sunlight you have, your weight, what part of the world you live in. So you have blood work done through your neurologist or your primary care physician. They give you a number, and then they can make a recommendation for a dose. Common doses are anywhere from 2,000 IUs per day up to 5,000 IUs per day. Pretty rare for people to be on 10,000 IUs per day. There's a sweet spot usually somewhere between 1,000 IUs and 5,000 IUs per day. It is possible to become toxic on vitamin D. So that's something to be aware of, monitor closely. You don't want to be toxic. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means your body can hang on to it. And vitamin D toxicity can cause other side effects, kidney stones, dizziness, disorientation, other problems. So make sure you work with your prescriber to obtain an adequate dose of vitamin D. Exercise. I really loved reading this paper that I referenced down here. Patients who exercise have greater brain volume. How cool is that? So just a little exercise can improve your cognition and you can have greater brain volume. Exercise also has additional benefits like strength. It might improve your strength. It might also improve your flexibility. It might also improve your energy. Although it's hard to exercise, it has so many benefits, which brings me to a couple little things that I like to talk about with exercise. First off, go low and slow. Don't ever go, okay, I'm going to exercise for the first time in 20 years and go try and run a mile, or you're going to be miserable. Start with 30 seconds on the treadmill. And if you can do that, then the next day do a minute. And then the next day do 5. And then do 5 minutes on the treadmill for 2 weeks. And then work your way up to 10 minutes or the elliptical or the rower or whatever it is you have access to. Low and slow. And you'll be surprised if you stick with it, how your exercise will get easier with time. Your cognition can improve with time. Your energy levels can improve. Low and slow. Another thing to remember when you're exercising is Uthoff's phenomenon. For those of you who haven't heard of Uthoff's phenomenon, when people with multiple sclerosis become overheated or their core body temperature becomes hot, all of their MS symptoms can become worse. So although it's super important to exercise, you don't want to become overheated while you're doing it. So if you're on the elliptical, have a fan on you. If you're an outside type person, exercise early in the morning or late in the evening when it's cooler. Wear a cooling vest, drink a lot of cold water, cool yourself from the inside out and the outside in to try and keep yourself cool while you are exercising, because overall it's a great thing to do for multiple sclerosis. Now here's one. Play word games out loud with family and friends? Really? Like, how is that going to help my multiple sclerosis? So, can I just use an app? There's brain game apps. Won't that work? Well, although brain game apps are awesome, and I'm not going to tell you not to do them, they're great. Let's do them in our spare time. But playing them out loud with family and friends stimulates multiple centers of the brain. So when you're saying something out loud, you're using your fluency center. You're also having to think of the word, so you're using the recall center, you're having to use recognition because you're finding that word. You're also playing with other people, so you're using the socialization center of your brain because you're having to play off of other people. You're probably laughing and enjoying yourself. And when you're doing that, that increases dopamine, and dopamine is the pleasure neurotransmitter of the brain. And when you do that, you're tapping into so many different pathways in your brain, different parts of your brain. It can help form new pathways and create new memories. Word games as simple as that game you play in your car with your kids when you're on a road trip. I'm going on a picnic and I'm taking an apple. I'm going on a picnic and I'm taking an apple and a banana. I'm going on a picnic and I'm taking an apple, a banana, and a cherry. You can see all of the different things you're having to use to do that. Now, if you don't have family or friends that will play games with you, sure, do your brain game apps, but then say them out loud. Or maybe sign up for Words with Friends and then say it out loud. Or FaceTime somebody so that you are using multiple centers of your brain when you're playing these word games out loud. If you like crossword puzzles, do them, but do them out loud. Challenge yourself, do it with other people so that you can stimulate multiple centers of your brain at once to try and form and maintain new pathways. Then enjoy and participate in a hobby. Now, this may sound silly, but a hobby has many benefits. And just like playing word games out loud, it might increase your dopamine because you're having fun. You also have to use the upper executive functioning part of your brain because you have to plan. It might be outside of the house. With COVID right now, it might not be. But let's think about different hobbies which could really stimulate your brain in different ways. How about painting? If you're painting, you have to budget to buy the paint. You have to buy a canvas. You will have to use your fine motor. You're going to have to use color and color mixing skills. You might look up YouTube videos on how to paint a certain thing, and you might look at it and enjoy it later and find that it's something you really like. How about quilting? You have to follow a pattern. You might join a quilting club and do it with other people and have socialization. You have to budget to buy the quilting supplies. How about bird watching? Gets you out in fresh air. You might join a bird watching club. You look up the different birds in a book. You're learning new things. Do you hear a common theme here? Enjoying a hobby can really stimulate the brain. Also, a few other things I've heard is challenge your brain. So if you're right-handed, try picking up a pen with your left hand and writing with your left hand. It's going to be hard as all get out and things are going to feel backwards, but it can help challenge the other side of your brain. Also write words backwards, write words frontwards, write words upside down. Another thing I recommend is writing lists. If you notice that you are always forgetting things and you are forgetting appointments or you're forgetting what you wanted to talk to people about, either keep a book and so you handwrite it down, or have a spot in your phone where you keep notes. When people come to see me in clinic, I love it when they have a list of things they want to talk about. I've asked people, how do you go about keeping track of your list? Some people say they have it up on their fridge or they have a whiteboard, and so if they ever think of anything, they write it down, or their spouse writes it down, or their kid writes it down, and they take a picture and they bring it with them. Some people say under their doctor appointment tab in their phone, they'll click on that appointment, and in the note section, they'll write down things they want to talk about. Other people keep it in a note section in their phone. Other people keep a journal. Whatever it may be for you, make sure you're writing things down. A couple other things to think about with cognition, no pun intended, and I laughed at myself for a good 2 minutes when I came up with that. Talk to your provider about medications that you're taking. Could they be causing cognitive side effects? There's a medication that many of you may be on that is commonly used for migraines. It's also used for seizures and pain. It's called Topamax, but there's kind of a nickname for it. Dopamax because it may make you feel dopey. So if you're really struggling with cognition, one of the first things to do is to talk to your provider about, are any of these medications that I'm taking causing me to have cognitive trouble? And would a change in dose help? Many of you might be taking gabapentin. That's a very common medication for nerve pain. And I've had a lot of people say it really dulls their cognition, and when they're not on it, it makes them sharper. So is there anything else you can take that may treat the problem in a different way that wouldn't cause cognitive side effects? Another thing I'm going to say, and people get angry at me for saying this, is cannabis can cause cognitive side effects. There's a reason they call it dope. It can make you dopey, and it can shrink the upper executive functioning center of your brain. So although cannabis has many great benefits, like improving MS spasticity and pain, it may cause cognitive changes and cognitive side effects. Another thing to think about is ongoing reading, creative expression, and learning new things can protect against cognitive impairment. I had a patient who uses a cane that recently picked up Zumba, and I love it. And she said she's thinking more clearly since she started doing Zumba. You have to think about the steps, think about what you're doing. Even though she's using a cane, she's using creative expression, memorizing steps, listening to music, using multiple parts of the brain. So that's a great thing. Also, I've heard many neurologists recommend ongoing reading for lifelong learning. Pick up a book and read about something you would have never read before. Take notes while you're reading it so that you learn things and you can maintain what you've learned. A few other things that the neuropsychologists recommend is nobody can multitask, and especially people with multiple sclerosis cannot multitask. If you find that you're forgetting important conversations with your spouse or your significant other or your friends, it might be because they're talking to you and there's too many things going on. You need to limit distractions. If the TV is going, the dog is barking, the kids are talking, and your spouse is telling you something important, there might be too much going on, and so you may not remember what they have said to you. So it's important to communicate to those in your life that are important to you. Hey, if you have something important that we need to talk about, we need to do it either during a lunch break or after all the kids have gone to bed, or we need to go into another room where there's no noise. You need to sit and look at each other in the eyeballs. You probably should have a pen and paper and be taking notes so that you can remember and write down and go back to your conversation later. Also, you can say, hey, this is important. I'm going to read this back to you so that you make sure you've communicated appropriately, you've understood what they're telling you, and you're able to say it back to them. Also, give yourself some grace. One of my lovely patients was really struggling with cognitive trouble, and she owned her own business and said, it's affecting my ability to talk to people. I'm really struggling. Well, she went and had a formal neuropsych evaluation, and the neuropsychologist said, actually, you're doing great. You need to give yourself some grace. You may be the only one noticing that you're having word finding trouble. And then in your head, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I couldn't think of that word. Everybody's noticing, everybody knows, I can't think of that word. And then you go in a downward spiral. You might just need to take a deep breath and restart. Give yourself some grace, or laugh about it and say, oh my gosh, I had trouble with that word. I'm going to come back to that later. And it's probably going to bug you more than anybody else. And I'm to my summary here. So I saw some hands going up. We'll answer some questions in a second here. So multiple sclerosis may affect cognition. Formal testing and treatment of cognition may be necessary. Living a healthy lifestyle may improve cognition. Lifelong learning, brain games, and hobbies can help maintain cognition. Treat depression and quit smoking. And then this also has come up quite a bit with the current pandemic. So I did need to bring this up. A lot of psychiatrists and psychologists are having patients coming in right now complaining of memory trouble, putting a wash rag in the fridge, forgetting to pick up their kids from school, forgetting to unplug things. What a lot of our psychiatrist friends have said is with the current pandemic, we're all in a fight or flight position that we've never been in before. We're having new information thrown at us every second. There's this many number of cases. You need to wear a mask. You need to do this. It's changing the way our lives are. It takes a lot more to think to do normal things. Okay, to go to the store, I have to make sure that I go early in the morning so there's nobody else around me. I need to maintain 6 feet from people. Do I have my mask? Is my mask in the car? Okay, I need to make sure I have my list, but I don't have my list on my phone. All these other things that are happening are causing people to be in a fight or flight situation and are really affecting cognition, not only for people with multiple sclerosis, but for people that don't have any trouble with their brains. And so back to giving yourself some grace, knowing that we need to calm down and relax. We're in a fight or flight, and this may be temporary, and the cognitive stuff may get better with time. And also write things down, and I say that because I write things down myself. See, guys? See? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now I'll open it up for questions.
We are ready for questions. If you have a question or comment, please use the raise hand feature in the app or send your question via chat. Please address it to everyone. To raise your hand, select more. That's going to be the icon with 3 dots, and click raise hand. I will unmute you, and then a button.
Oh, that's not it.
To allow you to do that. Please select allow. I'm going to start by starting with a question that was emailed to us by Sandra. My memory is not as good as it used to be. Could this be a cognitive problem with MS or a sign of dementia?
Good question. It could be both. Back to my very first slide, for some people, memory trouble is the very first symptom of multiple sclerosis. So it absolutely could be multiple sclerosis alone. Rarely do people have MS and dementia, but it's possible. So if it seems to be super concerning to people around you, your family, your friends, I would recommend a formal neuropsych evaluation, because they can really get into the nitty-gritty and tell the difference between multiple sclerosis cognitive problems and something else like dementia or Alzheimer's.
I have a question for you. Can you explain to our audience what exactly is a neuropsychologist and how do they differ from your standard everyday psychologist?
Yeah, so a neuropsychologist is somebody that has done special training in neurology. And so different than a psychologist or a psychiatrist in that they are really trained to be able to say, okay, what part of the brain is affected by this part of cognition and why? They're very good at saying, okay, their limbic system is affected or their short-term memory is affected. They've had specialized training. They usually have a PhD, that's their job, is to figure out, okay, what is going on with memory specifically, versus a psychologist is more focused on the depression aspect of things and what we can do about that.
We have a question from Velma. I have a terrible time with numbers. I am going to have to quit my job because of it. It is getting worse all the time.
So with that absolutely, I would recommend a formal neuropsych evaluation before you quit your job. Try all the things I talked about, and maybe you can form some new pathways there. But the trouble with numbers, try some number games with friends, and then talk to your neurologist about your trouble with numbers and see what else they recommend.
We have a question from Kathy. Are there any DMTs that help with cognition better than others?
Sure, that's a great question. And it's come up a lot lately. And so that is one thing that is kind of being looked at and studied more and more because it's kind of coming up. So would I recommend a certain DMT over another for cognitive reasons right now? No, but definitely something to talk to your neurologist about if there is one that they think would be better for you with your cognition. But I can't say that a head-to-head study has come out saying that one is better than the other.
We had another question emailed to us. This one's from Richard. I'm 76 and was diagnosed with primary progressive MS in 1990. I'm doing well physically, especially considering my age. I read a lot and I am studying a language other than English with modest success. My abilities to problem solve, to reason, and to navigate spatially have been reduced. This is complicated by increasing tremors. This is disturbing. What more can I do, if anything?
So all of the things that I recommended, the word games, maybe some physical therapy, maybe some cognitive therapy, some speech therapy, and then talk to your provider about if you should be on a medication to treat your MS or not. And then if any of the medications that you're on are causing side effects and causing some of the symptoms that you're having, and keep it up. Keep up the good work. Good job learning a new language. That's awesome and amazing.
We have another question in the chat from, and I'm sorry, I hope I get this right. I don't want to mangle it, but Tanjanika. She says, I am a better learner with background noises. I call it drunk on MS. And I had a related question from her. Give me just a second to find that. Because she is, why do I periodically feel intoxicated by multiple sclerosis, she asks. I call it drunk on MS. I want to better understand how to explain to my loved ones when I'm feeling drunk on MS.
You know, I think you said it perfectly. I think you should tell them I'm feeling drunk on MS. Pay attention to your triggers and when you notice that happens. It might be because you're overtired. It might be because you're overstimulated. It might be because you've done too much for the day, you've overdone it. It might be because you're dehydrated or you haven't eaten well or you haven't slept well. But if you just say, hey, I'm drunk, I feel drunk on MS right now, I need to go lay down. I think the biggest thing is open communication, that you communicate those silent symptoms with the people around you so that you can avoid arguments and avoid trouble and say, hey, I'm just done right now, I'm drunk on MS, and give yourself some grace and have this conversation with them when you're not drunk on MS and say, hey, sometimes this is how I feel and my brain just doesn't work and I'm dizzy and I can't think clearly and I feel like I'm gonna fall over and I can't pay attention, and have that be your safe word, you know, I'm drunk on MS right now, and so that they can understand. And then also I would say make sure you focus on those people and communicate with them and talk to them when you're doing well. You know, say, hey, I'm not drunk on MS right now. You want to go for a drive? But never drive drunk or drunk on MS.
La Portia, you're on. You have a question?
No, good. Go ahead.
Mother, my mom has MS, and I was wondering, how do I better help assist her on those days? My mom's Tanjanika, and she does sleep for long periods of time, and I don't know how to basically assist her without making her feel like I'm pointing out her MS, and I don't want to point out that she has MS, but I do want to help my mom.
Sure. What a good daughter. You're so awesome. Thank you. So communicate. Ask her, hey, on these bad days, what do you want me to do for you so that I'm not overstepping my bounds? Or, hey, is there something I can do like on Sundays that I can help you meal prep, or I can drive you to and from appointments, so that you can conserve energy. I think you being
Okay.
here tonight and listening is showing her that you care and that you're trying to understand and that you're learning. So thank you. You're awesome for doing that. But I think the biggest thing is open communication and saying, hey, what can I do to help you? Help me help you. And understand, like, some days she's going to be tired and she's going to sleep all day and she's going to miss stuff. And it is what it is. But luckily in this day and age, we can record things, you know? If it's a kindergarten graduation, if it is whatever it is, we can take care of it. My own mom missed my college graduation because she had pneumonia. And, you know, it's all right. It's just stuff, and we can record it and we can connect later. So allow her grace and allow you grace and just communicate. But then I think have a plan. You know, if she lives alone, is there some way I can help with cleaning, or is there some way I can help with cooking? Or what can I do to try and minimize your stress so that on drunk on MS days, maybe they don't happen as often?
Right. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Be safe.
All right, we have another question from Judy. I have been unable to keep regular sleep hours for decades. Any help?
Oh my gosh. I hear that all the time. And I would actually recommend a formal sleep evaluation with a sleep specialist if it's been decades, because you probably need an overnight sleep study to see what's going on. Are you having restless leg? Are you having sleep apnea, so you're waking yourself up at night? Is it that you're looking at screens too close to bedtime? Sometimes we temporarily have to prescribe people medication to put them to sleep for a good couple weeks to reset their cycle, their sleep cycle. But if it's been going on that long, I would recommend you see a sleep specialist and say, gosh darn, I need sleep. What can I do? So that they can help with that, figure out the root of the problem and what they can do about it.
We have a question from Ruth. I once used a computer program for MS during a training program. It was a Windows program. I have forgotten the name of this, but it was better than Luminosity for me. I can't find the name of this program. Do you know how I could find it?
Oh, darn, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I'm sorry. Shoot. And I'd like to know so we could share it with everybody. Sorry.
We have a question from Aileen. I hope I'm getting the pronunciation on that right. Aileen asks, I've had several neuropsych evaluations. It's far easier to get a neuropsych evaluation than to actually find someone who does cognitive therapy. How can we find therapists who do real therapy?
Sure, maybe that's a challenge for the MS Foundation, to try and link people in their area with cognitive therapists. But I get my recommendations for cognitive therapists from the neuropsychologist in my area. So I say, okay, based on their deficits, who should we send them to and why? So I would say reach out to the neuropsychologist and say, hey, who should I see in this area for cognitive therapy?
I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question or comment, please use the raise hand feature in the app or send your question via chat. Please address it to everyone. Raise your hand. Click the screen to pull up the menu. Select more, that's the icon with 3 dots, and click raise hand. And I will unmute you, and then a button will appear on your screen asking you if you want me to allow you to speak. I have another question from Valerie. Why do I talk out loud to myself?
You know, I can't say why, but I won't tell you not to. That might be your brain's way of using the Fluency Center to help you remember things. So keep doing it.
I have a question from Kimberly. Was the program you used called Brain HQ?
So that was somebody responding to another question. So maybe it was Brain HQ. Look that up.
All right. I have another question here from let me find it here. I'm sorry. I have another question here from Tanjanika. How worried should I be about my memory shortcomings? I am in my master's degree program at Grand Canyon University currently, and I am thinking I should quit because I am having issues over sleeping and remembering to submit assignments.
So how worried should you be? I tell people not to worry in general because worry is not going to fix anything other than cause stress. So that if you're in the middle of trying to get a master's, that would be worth sitting down and talking to a few people. The first, the counselors at the school. Talk to them about, can they make accommodations for you because you have multiple sclerosis? Can you get extended deadlines? Can you have more time for testing? Can they assign you a counselor or somebody else to help you, an assistant? So talk to the university about trouble that you're having and what accommodations can be made. And then also talk to your neurology team about if there's anything they can do to help you and make accommodations before you consider dropping out.
I have another question for you. I noticed as you were going through many of the factors that play into cognitive deficits, most of them appear to be amenable to individual choices and individual decision making. Can you go into the extent to which people actually have choices in how they approach their cognitive deficits that don't necessarily require like medication?
Sure. So not your choice to get MS, unfortunately. And we can't undo what MS has done to memory, but you can choose to eat healthy. You can choose not to smoke. You can choose to sleep well. You can choose to exercise. So one reason I chose this topic and I didn't focus a lot on medications is the empowerment and the things you can do. Now that I can see a lot of people in the room, I can see that there are some people that use wheelchairs. Well, the beautiful thing about YouTube these days is that there's wheelchair yoga and wheelchair Pilates. There are so many different things that you can do sitting in a chair to exercise. Food delivery services or family. Now is the time to empower yourself and make good lifestyle choices that can help your overall MS. But you're right, Chris, a lot of them are things people can do to help themselves.
I may have missed this earlier, but I have another question from Tanjanika. I had depression long before my diagnosis. I take meds and talk therapy. How can I manage my master's degree program and how can I keep up with classwork?
Yep. So I think the things we talked about before.
Question.
Yep.
Here we go. We've got another question from Judy. Some folks may find providers by being in an MS support group. I guess the question would be, how would that work?
Yeah, so somebody said, how can we find neuropsychologists? She's right. An MS support group, you may be able to ask around and say, hey, anybody know any neuropsychologists in the area or any cognitive therapists or physical therapists that are good at these types of things in the area? So good idea, good thought there. Good thought to ask around with an MS support group.
We have Moto. You are on. You have a question?
Hi. Does brain atrophy cause cognitive issues or delays or have anything to do with it?
Yes, brain atrophy can cause cognitive trouble. There's a campaign going around right now that talks a lot about brain atrophy. So back to the DMTs, how they affect brain atrophy. It's a hot topic right now, but yes, brain atrophy can affect cognition. Now, little fact there, everybody's brain atrophy is starting at age 25. And so, but just unfortunately, people with MS, their brain can atrophy at a more rapid rate. So that's something important to keep in mind. And I generally recommend that people are on a disease modifying therapy to try and slow down that brain atrophy, unless there are reasons that you and your prescriber deem why you shouldn't be on a disease modifying therapy. But yes, absolutely, brain atrophy can affect cognition.
Great, good information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, let's address the atrophy issue a little further. Are there things that people can, aside from things that you, matters you brought up earlier, what else can people do to sort of recognize and perhaps slow down brain atrophy?
Yeah, so exercise, that's one of the things that can increase brain volume. And then being on a disease-modifying therapy that is working, and a disease-modifying therapy that's preventing new lesions from occurring.
We have a question from Velma. Why can't I handle being in the dark?
I don't know. I've never, in all my years, I've never heard that one. So I'm going to have to say I don't know. Now I'm going to research it and see if I can figure it out. But I don't know. Sorry. Ask your provider that one, see if they know.
We have a question from Kay. What in-office tests are best to evaluate changes in cognition? There appears to be a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of in-office tests, and there's great debate right now amongst the MS community about which are the best ones to do in office. And in fact, there's an app that's being developed that people can do in the office. There's a single-digit modalities. There's a whole bunch of other things. So it's hard for me to say one specifically. There's a cognitive assessment. But I think the best ones would be a formal neuropsych evaluation that tests everything. Those little snapshot in time ones, we're kind of learning aren't, they're fine, but not the greatest long term, and harder to compare one to another. So to be continued, we're working on that.
And that's all the time we have for now. If you missed any part of this conference, it will be replayed on msfocusradio.org and available on demand on our MS Focus SoundCloud page or our YouTube page. Remember to follow MS Focus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for times and access information. Our next teleconference will be Wednesday, July 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Pacific. Our speaker will be Dr. Adnan Subeh, and he will provide an update on COVID-19 and MS. Be sure to be with us for that. We'd like to extend our sincerest thanks to all of our attendees for your participation, and especially to our guest today, Katrina Bawden. Thank you so much for the time you spent to prepare and share this information with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure and a joy, and I hope and I hope people learn things. Thank you all, and thank you to the MS Foundation. This is a great service, and I'm so glad you were able to attend tonight.
And we were glad to have you. Everybody have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.